going to talk to you today about visual literacy. Most of us are literate. That means we can read and write, of course, but we're not visually literate. When we study in school, we're taught how to diagram a sentence and all the parts of a sentence and how to put those sentences together to express a complete idea and to put them into paragraphs to make that idea more complete, and then put the paragraphs into some organized form so that we can actually tell a story. But when we start talking about the visual language, which is we get so much of our information from, and as photographers, we're not taught how to formally compose or put together an accurate visual representation, because we don't know anything about visual literacy. Well, what I'm going to talk to you today about is how to use the visual language as accurately as you do the written language. And we're going to talk about the parts of a sentence, just like, what are the parts of a sentence that help you communicate accurately. And if you know those elements, then they're the same elements that we would use when we put together a photograph. One is like your noun. You know what a noun is. You studied that in elementary school when we learned how to diagram a sentence. A noun is a person, place, or thing, right? And in photography, that noun is your subject. It's what you're taking a picture of. Now, we can be more descriptive of that noun, and we do that by adding what's called, an adjective, and that gives a more complete description of what that noun is. And we can do the same thing in photography by adding supportive elements, something that relates directly to the subject, that gives us more information about that subject. It helps complete that idea, that visual idea about what the subject is involved in, or the importance of it, or what makes it look the way it does, or why we enjoy it, or so forth and so on. And then we have verbs and adverbs, but a verb describes movement or action. And in a photograph, we can describe movement or action about something that's moving in the photograph, or that appears like it's moving, or something that gives the idea that the subject may not be in physical movement, but gives the idea of coming motion or coming movement. So we have all these parts of a photograph, the same as we would a sentence. And we're going to look at some photographs later on, and we're going to describe, how these are used in the photographs that we make. So we're going to move on from that, and we're going to start talking about, after we have diagrammed this sentence, or diagrammed this photograph, how we're going to make it into something more than that. Now, we're talking about a single photograph. And a single photograph can communicate some information, and oftentimes we use that single photograph as the complete thing in and of itself. If you're a photojournalist, you may shoot a whole series of pictures, but you're going to pick out that one picture that's going to be published, that's going to communicate that idea or that activity or whatever you're trying to say. But you're trying to say it in one picture. Sometimes photographers will use a series of pictures to help tell a story, and we call that a photo essay. It would be this equivalent to writing an essay. It would be a series of 4 or 5 photographs that are strung together that help give a complete idea, and we've seen that used in magazines. Whenever we're trying to tell a story, like National Geographic will have a whole series of pictures that tell a story. If you look in fashion magazines, it'll be a series of pictures that tell a story about clothing or style or so forth and so on. So it's a series of photographs that tell a story, you know. So in a sports magazine like Sports Illustrated, or it will tell the story of a football game or a baseball game. And generally it's more than one picture. It's a series of pictures that give a more complete idea. And that's like a photo essay. Now, there are photographers who move much further than that, and these are photographers who have a strong interest in one area, and sometimes they will work on documenting more than just a story, but a complete idea or concept or place or thing. It's like I have this book in front of me that's by a photographer that's called Nick Brandt, and he photographs in East Africa, and he makes these volumes of pictures that tell the story about the animals of East Africa. And he will spend, you know, months or sometimes a year, as long as a year, working on this concept for this book. And we have another photographer that I really love his work, is Sebastião Salgado. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his first name correctly, but he's a Brazilian photographer, and he makes these monumental books. I hate to call them a story because they go so much further than just a story. His first one, I think, was called Work, and he documented people who were laboring throughout the world and the kinds of things that they did. And that was a project that lasted years. And the last one I think he worked on, the last one that I have one of his books, because he may have finished a few more since I purchased this last one, was called Brasilia, where he photographed not Brasilia, Amazonia, where he photographed the Amazon basin in South America. And that was a project I think he worked on for 8 or 9, maybe 10 years, I'm not sure. But it was a very long process, and it was thousands of pictures that were edited down into hundreds to actually publish this beautiful book. So we have photographers who are doing the same thing that you would do if you were doing something in writing. You know, it can be as short as one photograph that tells a story. It can be a series of pictures that are a photo essay, or it can be something that makes up a volume, like a book that would be equivalent to a novel. So we're doing the same thing in photography. Photography in a literary way. I'm going to show you some of my personal work, and I make photographs that I think are visually poetic. I shouldn't say I think they're visually poetic. That's my aim, is to make them visually poetic. And this is a project that I've been working on for my lifetime. It's more than 45 years I've been working on this. And if you think about what a poem is not a story where there are interconnected ideas. It's one individual writing, short writing, that stands by itself. And there may be some connection. If it's one poet, there may be a connection of style, or there may be a connection of a way of working that gives you some connection to everything that that poet writes. Well, my pictures have a certain style, and there's some things that connect them together. One, they're all close-up pictures. Two, they're all black and white. And what I concern myself with is the content and the lighting. And the first one I'm going to show you is this picture of a Napa cabbage. And so it's a cabbage, but being more descriptive, the cabbage is the noun. The Napa cabbage, it's giving more information about that cabbage. So I guess that would be the adjective. And the pronouns would be the cabbage leaves around it. Okay, but one of them is the subject of the picture because it's a little bit larger and it's completely contained within the frame of the camera. So we have some of those parts of a sentence in this one photograph. Now, one thing that I concern myself with in all the pictures that I make is the quality of the light. After all, it's photo, meaning light, graphy, drawing. So the light's very important to the images that I make. The next one is this photograph of a calla lily. And it's shot from a unique perspective. In other words, it's shot from looking up from underneath the calla lily and the light's placed inside. It's not that I'm using a little light bulb in the lily itself. It's a small spotlight that shoots the light inside of the calla lily. And I have a very dark background, a black background, by using black velvet because that absorbs any excess light that might be bouncing around my little studio area. And so we know the noun is the lily itself. And oftentimes you don't need any more than that because simplicity is the essence of good design. And the next one is the egg in the flag here. And this is using symbolism. You know, there's some principles of art we're going to talk about later on. And of course, the egg in the center is the noun. And you know, the nest around it gives more information. It contains it. I guess we would call that an adjective because it helps define it and it helps define an idea. You know, and of course, the flag is the same thing. It helps confine it to give more information about what we might be trying to say. And of course, the lighting is important. Again, for myself, lighting is one of the essential characteristics of the pictures that I make. So I always try and control the lighting, you know, making the center part lighter and it goes darker around the edges. And of course, the American flag is very important to the picture because it's a symbol of, you know, of this country that I live in. And it has something to do with who I am. You know, an artist is oftentimes the sum of their experiences. And this last photograph that I'm going to show you, I call Genesis. Make strong use of symbolism and lighting, of course. And I like to sometimes give you information about how the picture was made because I know photographers are the ones that are probably interested in looking at this video, and they might be concerned about, you know, how this was done. Well, the reason I call it Genesis is because the things that are important to life that are the foundation of life as I know it, because I'm not a biologist, but they are the egg, because most things in our life come from an egg or a seed. Those are like the foundations of life. When you think of most animals and fish and, you know, amphibians and mammals and birds, you know, all of them emanate from an egg, even if the egg is in the womb first. And or the plants come from a seed, which is equivalent to an egg. And then we have heat or sunlight. Now, I know there are some species that live in caves that have never seen the light of the sun, but most species need some kind of heat or warmth from the sun. And then water. So I've included all of those elements to help communicate this idea, but I try to do it in a way that's beautiful, because if we're trying to make something poetic, even if you're trying to express a concept or an idea, there's no reason it can't be beautiful. And so that's the foundation of what I would call visual literacy. And I hope this helps you when you start trying to organize the images that you make. Now, I know when you're out there and you're taking pictures, you know, and you're carrying your camera around with you, you may not be able to consider all of these things, but it's something to think about when you are in a position to actually make the pictures and take time to make the pictures say exactly what you want them to say. So if you like this, you can give me a thumbs up and make a comment. And I have these images all on Instagram, and there'll be a little bit more information about each photograph on Instagram, some of the conceptualization ideas around why we made the pictures.